Good morning, people. Welcome to Exploring the Ka with host Ra Castaldo. It's morning meditation. I only have a couple minutes, and I have an interesting thing I wanted to discuss that happened to me back a long time ago. It was in 2003. I was living in Long Beach, and this was one of the first times that I experienced what my ancestors experienced, even being called a witch and being called that something was wrong with me, that I had weird psychic powers, and made me really feel insecure about myself, and made me not grounded, and pick up an attachment for a few years, I feel. And I had to battle this thing and confront my insecurity. It was some kind of monster that I built in my own head, implanted thought that, you know, manifested into its own boogeyman on my soul. And I don't know if you've ever heard what ghostwriting is, but I've used to do this without knowing what it was, even as a kid. I can remember the first time I consciously remembered doing something like this. I was standing on the beach as a child in Florida. We went to Disney in 1987. And I remember standing on the beach like I was waiting for something, looking up at the sky. And all of a sudden I felt like energy around me and power in the air. And I saw a little electric going through the clouds, like lightning but going sideways. And it's like I felt like I was watching it go around the clouds and spin around the earth to come towards me. And it was so weird. It was like I was waiting for this energy. Some kind of electric inertia was coming. You know, so I like saw the light, like the energy go around the earth, kinda, and then I felt like it was coming right towards me, and then I felt like it hit me in the back and in through my chest, and then the next thing I know, I was rocking back and forth like this, sitting on the beach, with all these seashells in front of me and all these things that I had arranged in a certain pattern. And I had like a piece of stick, like a stick or a beechwood, and I was going in a figure 8 pattern over and over again on the beach, just sitting there rocking back and forth over and over again. And my mother came over and shook me. She's like, "What are you doing? Well, you walked down the shore a little bit, you got lost for a second, I couldn't find you." And she went and came and found me, and she was, "What are you doing here?" And like when we looked on when I was like, after I was going like this, and I wasn't even looking what I was doing, I was in a trance. And then after I put the stick down, as I was looking away, my mom was like dragging me by the hand, and I looked back and I saw an image like in the sand, and there was some kind of like faces interweaved with each other. And I could still do that today, you know, and a lot of times when I start doodling, I start catching myself doing that. And so I had this neighbor that lived behind me in like the apartments behind me in California, in Long Beach. And a lot of times we would sit in the alleyway behind the house next to her doorway, and there would be chairs right there, and we would play cards at night or during the day. We would play some cards, she would play rummy, and she would smoke cigarettes. Sometimes we would smoke a cigarette together or something like that. I smoked cigarettes back then. And I forget her name now. She was really close to me, this lady too, for like a year. Like I was always hanging out with her. I talked to her daughter. She was probably in her late 50s at the time, and I was in my early 20s. And like we really connected, like we were really close. We were always talking. She grew up really Baptist, and a couple of doors down was her Baptist church actually, and it would be loud as hell in there. And afterwards she would sell fish and chip sandwiches out of her house, and they were amazing. But we were really close, me and this lady. We would talk about everything, you know. And then one day, I had my notebook on the table. You know, there's like a little table where you could play cards in the alleyway. We had like an old table with chairs there. And so this lady, like, we would always basically be chatting about so many topics and so much interesting stuff. And then one day I had my notebook out, and we were just talking, and while we were talking, I was like doing that in a notebook while I was looking at her. I wasn't even looking at what I was doing. I was just doing that with my hand, and I felt this strong connection to her. And after I was done with the notebook, like after I was going like this, and I felt really drained, and I looked at the picture and I was like, oh my god, like, and I drew like, it was like a big cloud and like a guy forming out of the cloud, like he was popping through the cloud, and he was holding a cane. He had these circle glasses on. He was bald, like a shaved head, older. And I showed it to her. I was like, hey, did you ever seen anybody like this before? And she went completely silent. All the everything drained from her face. She looked at me like with this cold stare, with a shock and amazement too. Like she was just like, oh, like, and then she was like, what's wrong with you? What are you, some kind of evil witch? What are you have some weird evil powers? I was like, what's wrong, sweetie? What's the matter? She was like, oh, that's my brother Terry. He passed away a couple years ago. How did you do that? What's wrong with you? What are you, some kind of witch? And it really made me think, like, is that evil? Am I calling forth some kind of darkness? What's wrong? Is there something wrong with me? And it gave me some kind of insecurity, and it made me manifest some kind of monster in my head about myself. And I ran with that for a little while, and it was like I was not grounded at that moment, doubting myself. And that's an example of how you can pick up these attachments that you basically can create with your mind, that I created some kind of boogeyman making me think I had some kind of evil in me, when in reality I was just connecting to the spiritual realms. But I don't like doing that anymore. I do think you're welcoming me in, you're opening yourself up to that dimension or that realm, and you never know what could come in and cling to you and stay with you. So in my opinion, it's not recommended to even mess with anything like that unless you are truly a master at it and truly know what you're dealing with. And I really got to get out of here because I'm late, but this has been a good time, and welcome to Exploring the Ka with host Rock Castaldo. Tomorrow on Spiral Radio, I'll be having my good buddy Masaki Miyagawa, and we're doing another edition of Fallen Angel Friday. Find me at themysticalspiral.com. Find Masaki at akaida.com. That's AKAIDA.com. And Spiral out.